farmer you're on. You'll experience wealth beyond your wildest dreams. Indulge yourself in glitz and glamour like never before. So why don't you roll the dice on running your very own Bloomin' Business Casino? Bloomin' Business Casino. Don't delay. Add to your wish list today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of the Indie Initiative here on Insider Gaming. I'm Mike Straw, your host, as always. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by David Rabineau from Homo Ludens. He is producer, CEO, developer, whatever you want to call him. He is one of the brains behind Blooming Business Casino, the game we are here to talk about today. And David, first off, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really exciting.
So the game Blooming Business Casino officially launches after we're recording this on May 19th. It launches on May 23rd. For people that don't know about the game, in the shortest way possible, I guess, how can you explain what Blooming Business Casino is?
Well, in the shortest way possible, Blooming Business Casino is a casino tycoon with a really big emphasis on drama and a really unusual art direction, where instead of what you would typically find in a tycoon, you have much more lively characters that happen to have animal heads.
The animal heads. That was actually my first question. Yes. What was the decision behind going with the animals? Because it stands out. Obviously, that's one of the biggest things, is how do we stand out in such a crowded indie market, as crowded gaming market as is. But what went into we're going to use animals for these characters?
Yeah, well, they are animals, definitely. In the canon way, they're animals, not humans with animal heads. But so we put a lot of thought into this, and as you said, we're looking at a market that is very crowded. We needed to find some solutions to kind of stand out in all the games that are out there. And I think that one of the reasons we looked at using that type of characters was that we're talking about some stuff that can be a bit dark at times, and throughout history, using animals to kind of diffuse a problematic topic was kind of used. And if we look at casinos, for instance, if you put out slot machines and have grandmas that come and lose their savings, you may feel a bit bad as the casino owner. When it's a koala, it's surprisingly less sad. And so that's one of the reasons why we decided to go with animal heads, to kind of lower the tone a little bit and make it more easy to get into. And the other reason why we used animal heads is because, as you said, the indie market is very crowded, and we really wanted to make a tycoon game that doesn't look like the other tycoons. Because when you look at the whole market, many games have very similar realistic art directions. We decided to really go the opposite way, with lots of colors, something very soft, easy to get into, and animals felt right in that overall art context.
Yeah, you brought up the art style and the colors. It's a very colorful game, but I also noticed, and this just may be my terrible eyesight, it's a very muted game when it comes to colors. Like, it's nothing that's super splashy or that's going to I guess trigger any sort of issues or anything like that. Was that like a design choice to kind of have this more I guess muted might be the best word I can think of?
Yeah, muted is a good word. I think you're the first one to use this one, at least that I know of, and I think it's quite an appropriate word. And yes, that is absolutely by design, because it's kind of similar to the rest of the reasons why we have that art direction. We want to have a game that's quite welcoming. We don't want you to come into the game and be kind of triggered by anything. So the pace is quite slow. The objectives are fairly easy to reach. If you want to go into like heavy optimization as a hardcore tycoon player, you can, but if you don't, that's perfectly fine. We even have a creative sandbox mode where you have unlimited money, all the items unlocked from the get-go, and you can just decorate as you like. It's almost like playing a weird version of The Sims. And that thing about the colors and having something very soft and welcoming that plays into it, we think, because people who want a smooth, relaxing experience kind of find that in all aspects of the game, and that's a big one.
Yeah, the relaxing experience. That's kind of what I've noticed when I've played it. It's a game where I've found myself just lounging on my couch, whether it's with my laptop or whatever I'm doing. I'm just lounging while I play it, which to me are the best types of games. As a dad with 2 young kids, I need some time to just not sit in this chair and like lounge and play. So it's nice. How did you get during the development of this of the game of Blooming Business Casino? Were there any major obstacles to get to that point, to where the game became kind of it's still a deep game. I don't want anybody to
Yeah.
get confused who's listening that it's just some really simple. It's a very deep tycoon casino game. It just looks simple. How did you get to that point though to make sure it was deep enough for players?
So yeah, I mean, there were definitely many obstacles on the road, and if I remove my mug out of the way, you'll see that I proudly wear a Factorio t-shirt, so people may be able to understand that we are indeed fans of deep optimization as well. And yeah, I mean, it's all about layers, and we decided to kind of make it so people who want a smooth, relaxing experience can get it. People who want to go deep into optimization can do it as well. And that was kind of the key for us. When it comes to the obstacles of development, this is the first title we make as Homo Ludens, as a company. So I think the biggest obstacle was building a company, building a team, building a game all at the same time. And it took us more than 3 years. So it's quite weird to see it coming to an end.
Yeah.
But I think that in terms of obstacles regarding how deep the mechanics go, the main one we had was because of modding. So it was quite important for us to support modding extensively at some point once we're live. And because of that, we had to develop the game in such a way that the content that we put out is basically a mod as itself. And managing this when it comes to balancing the game, making sure that all the different variables that people will be able to adjust in-game, also through mods, are accessible whenever you want to have access to them, was quite tricky. As you can imagine, making UIs for a tycoon game is very, very complicated.
Yeah, the UI thing, that's what I love. So my 9 to 5, my main job is I'm a front-end web developer and web application dev. So seeing UI, that's usually the first thing I look to. Just how's the UI, how's the UX? The UI to me is very clean. And then it's simple to find what you need. I mean, you got to learn things, but once you learn it, luckily there's a tutorial to tell you. Haha. But once you learn it, how much iteration went back and forth to making sure the game was simple to grasp for new players? Because some games, they throw you right into the wolves and you have to just figure it out on your own. This, it recommends you can try and jump right in, but it says, hey, you might want to do this first. How much back and forth went to making sure players can easily, I guess, get accustomed to the games, where things are located, how you build, how you clean up, how you hire, and all that type of stuff?
So I guess we had between 10 and 15 major iterations when it comes to UI and UX in the game. It's so tricky to get things right, and you need to test again and again and again with new people who don't know the game. So as an indie developer, one of the tricky things is finding new people that haven't played the game and that are willing to play a game that's in development, because at some point you run out of friends and family, of course. And so the way we went about this is, initially we felt like the game should be released into early access, and then iterate throughout the live period, and then go out in full launch. We ended up not doing the early access, but we did very regular playtests online. Fortunately, at the time where we wanted to really get into playtesting, Steam launched their playtest feature, so we got to use that. And it was like very convenient to be able to do this. And so we've had a lot of playtests. And we've been able to interact with the community throughout these, and that was very helpful.
How much feedback was taken from the community as far as maybe what they saw and what was changed over time?
So much. It would be very hard to list everything, but I mean the whole. One big example. So you know how we have this area system where you place down an area in which then you place objects. We call them totems internally, but they're objects if you're a real person, I guess.
Developers are real people too.
But yeah, that's true. But that area system initially it had the shape of Tetris blocks. And we thought we were geniuses using these Tetris blocks, and you had to kind of find a way to fit all your areas in the floor of the casino. And some playtesters enjoyed that, but they were like a really, really small minority, and most people told us it was quite a bad idea. And in hindsight, I think they were right. And it's really the kind of thing where you're like, hey, that's odd, but is it a good idea still? And yeah, it wasn't. But fortunately, we were fortunate enough to have playtesters let us know. So stuff like this, and of course, as you said, the tutorial, and we have a little system that will remain in place at least during the launch period, where people can press F8 on their keyboard at any time and send us feedback about the game, and that will give us a screenshot of where they are and stuff like this. And you mentioned the tutorial and onboarding people into the game. Some people, when they were playing the game initially, would be like, yeah, I'm not sure I understand what I'm supposed to do there. And we really looked through all of these reports, and that helped us notice, hey, we need to explain this better because no one seems to understand it. And the last thing that really helped was physical events. Unfortunately, we started development during COVID times, but in 2022, we started being able to attend events and show the game there, and also watching people play the game. That was obviously very helpful.
So you get this feedback from players while they're playtesting. Does it? Because I know everybody's different in how they take feedback. Does it when you have something that you think might be good in the game and then you get the feedback and it's like, no, this is awful. Does that kind of mess with your head, with the team's head, about like, maybe are we even doing the right thing? Like, how does that act? Because like I said, everybody's different on how they take that.
Yeah, well, I guess even within the development team, people tend to react differently. I think that as you get more and more experience making games, you learn to kind of be cool with it. And as you make more and more games, you know that more often than not, your ideas are bad, and that's fine. You need to try out stuff and fail to end up achieving something. So I think I'm pretty much personally okay with this. And also, it really depends. Like the other founder of Homo Ludens, our creative director, he's a very enthusiastic fellow. So when people say, yeah, this is really bad, this is awful, that was a bad idea, he's like, yeah, outstanding, we got feedback. And yeah, that also kind of helps get over
See,
it.
I'm the exact opposite. So it depends on how it's delivered. Sometimes feedback I get, and I'm just like, no, I'm the worst. I need to quit. I'm not even in the wrong field. Like, I've gone off that deep end before. I've gone off like, oh, that was okay. That was a good idea. I missed it. So I kind of go back and forth. The enthusiasm, like the feedback, I guess that might help. How does that, like, you have the team? How big is the team at the company?
So there's 20 of us at the office nowadays. So the team slowly grew throughout development. So it's starting to be quite a big team for an indie studio like ours. But yeah, so there's
have you found as the company's grown, things have gotten easier? Like, what were the obviously every company as it grows, there's for lack of a better term, growing pains.
Yeah.
What were some of those like? Because obviously when it's a small team, you have this mission of what you're doing. And then as you bring in, that idea might change because you're bringing in these new people. How has the game changed, I guess, or the idea behind Blooming Business Casino throughout this growth of the company?
So I think as people join the project, it's important that people have their ownership and that people feel responsible for some area of the game. And so everybody had their opportunity to make slight changes and also have kind of open conversations about anything. That's something that's really important for us as a studio, to give a lot of ownership to like the staff in general. And yeah, I mean, we've been pretty lucky. I think one of the funny things is that there's like about a third of the team that is kind of hardcore into tycoon games and simulation games, but the other 2/3 are not. And even though it may sound like a bad idea when you're making one, that was incredibly helpful for what we discussed before about making a game that's welcoming for people who are not really experienced in the genre. Because, yeah, you get people saying, why are we doing this like this? And I would go, yeah, well, I don't know, 2 Point Hospital does it. And that's a reference game, obviously. And then the person in the staff would say, yeah, but it doesn't feel nice. It doesn't feel right. Let's try something else. And thanks to that, you get new ideas and new ways to approach problems that other developers may have solved differently. And it ends up making a game that I think is more welcoming than the typical tycoons you find out there.
Did you mentioned 2 Point Hospital as a reference game? Were there many games that you guys looked into as far as like what you want to try and emulate, what you want to take inspiration from, what you want to avoid? Like how did coming up with what ultimately became Blooming Business Casino, what ultimately became that? Like how did these ideas come?
So I think that, yeah, well, 2 Point Hospital is definitely a benchmark. It's a very welcoming game. It's very good. It worked really well, commercially speaking as well, which is also something that we look at, obviously. I think other titles that inspired us are, even if it may not be obvious, the Paradox games, like Crusader Kings, Stellaris, because they're extremely strong at bringing out emergent narratives. And that's something that's really important to us, that whenever you play the game, you're going to have one experience. And if I play the game and play through the same levels, we're going to make different choices, and the choices we make are going to impact the game mechanics differently. And then we can meet at the water cooler the next day at the office and chat about it. And even though we played the same level, we have very different stories to tell. And I think that's one big inspiration for this, the Paradox games. And yeah, other games that felt quite important to us when we looked at benchmarks were the Frontier titles. Planet Zoo is obviously very, very good. And some have put the focus on stuff that we're not very interested in. For instance, I think the customization aspects of the Frontier games are absolutely incredible, but you need to have a team of 200 developers to achieve that. So you need to pick your battles, I guess.
What is your personal favorite part of the game?
I think that my personal favorite part of the game is something that the Germans call Wuselig. That's the moment I become deeply European. And the Wuselig is that feeling you get. It's I don't think there's a word in English for that. There's none in French. It's the feeling you get when you look at a colony of ants kind of going about their business. And it feels nice to watch this. And so what I personally enjoy the most is when I have completed my casino, I look at life happening there, and kind of feel satisfied with my work.
But do you ever really feel satisfied? Like for me personally, so I play City Skylines like religiously. It's one of my favorite games. I'm big into that. No matter what, I'm never happy. Like I'm like, oh, I built this interchange wrong. Like I placed this the wrong area. I shouldn't have placed this. And I'm already finding myself doing that with my casino, where like I'll make a room. Okay, this is gonna be my roulette room or wherever. And then I'm mad that I made that room. Maybe like 20 minutes after I made it. Like, I'm personally like, do you ever get that way too, where you look and you're like, you're watching everything, you think you're good, and then you go, no, I could have done that better.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, definitely, I get that feeling from time to time, but I think it's fairly similar to maybe the way you and I take feedback differently.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes you want to like go back to it and kind of rebuild everything, and I think that's also a nice feeling. I mean, you may give yourself some blame for like 30 seconds, but then you get the fun of destroying the Legos and building again. And I don't know about you, but personally, I love doing this with Legos. Whenever I'm done building something, I'm like, yeah, this could have been better. Let's destroy it and go
That's
again.
my son right now. He's with building blocks and everything like that.
Awesome. That's a great excuse to buy more Legos and help out.
So the game, when the game is released, like I said at the beginning, we're filming this a few days, a little bit beforehand. What is going to be going through your head when the full version 1.0 is out there for everyone?
Well, I think so. I've been slowly bracing for that moment. It's probably going to be a bit emotional because of all the work of so many people that went into this. Because we've talked about the Ludens people, but there's also the Curve Games people, our publisher. So it's years of work for dozens of people, and it's going to be a weird moment. I personally am always feeling kind of weird in release times, because you think of all the stuff that you would have rather done differently with the game. But I don't really know what's gonna go through my head at that moment, but I can tell you that I'll have a champagne bottle in my hand, and hopefully that will help out with whatever's going through my head at that time.
So I can't wrap this up without asking, what are the plans for the series, for this game specifically? Obviously, I know plans for the company will be more games, but what are the plans for this game post-launch? Like a long-term support, expansions, anything like that you guys decided on?
Well, we're not completely set on what we'll do, but we will definitely support the title. We built this game to be a live game, and the same way we have regular playtests, for us, we hope it's going to be business as usual, and we'll be able to maintain the game post-launch. If the game does well enough, there may be expansions at some point. But we definitely want to support the game, and I think the first few months will be addressing suggestions from people about UX and improving that, and also observing what the community comes up with modding, which we're very excited about.
David, I want to thank you for joining me. I love when I get to play these games ahead of time and come in knowing what I'm talking about. It makes me sound smart. It's a very fun game. You can learn more, everyone, at their website about it, bloomingbusiness.games, Twitter /bloomingbiz, YouTube, look up game trailers. They are on Steam. You can pick up the game. I highly recommend it. It's a fun time, and I'm enjoying it. And I, again, can't thank you enough for taking the time, especially around launch window, to join me.
No, I mean, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure. It was really nice to discuss the game with you. Thank you for playing it in advance. I'm sure you sound clever, even if you don't, but you definitely did.